Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for coming today. I'm really happy to see all of you. I should start from apology of my English. It's not my first language, so I know that sometimes I sound funny, weird, but I hope that you will understand my idea. And if something remains unclear during the session time, you can ask me. Our meeting will be divided into two parts. In the first part, I will speak about myself, about books and movies with disabled characters. And in the second part, we will have a discussion about possible differences between what you heard today from me, from my speech, and what you thought before about this topic. So let's start. My name is Alina Polkad, and I'm an international student from Estonia. Estonia is a small Baltic country in East Europe, so you can see it in the map. I'm doing now my master degree in computer science at Bridgewater State University. But today I would like to talk about my other field of study, and it is disability studies. While doing here my master degree in computer science, I finished to write my PhD thesis, and shortly my topic is the representation of people with disability in culture as realization of social status of other. As you see, I'm a disabled person. I have SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, and it is a rare genetic disease that makes a person's muscles weaker and weaker. Normally, people with such disease, his life ends because lungs become too weak for breathing. But don't worry, I'm stable because about 6 years ago or 8 years ago, it was invented drug that doesn't cure, but it treats the disease. And I am very lucky that I'm in this country because I can get the treatment here. And I think I'm also very lucky because being a child, I didn't know about such a scary prognosis. So I grew up feeling as an absolutely normal girl. I used wheelchair from my early years of life. I have never stand, I have never walk, so I knew that it put some certain limitation to my movements. But to be honest, while I was studying in a primary ordinary school, I have never felt myself as a disabled, other, or different. And I can assure you that my classmates, children from apartment complex where we lived, they also didn't perceive me as strange or other. For them, I was just girl who uses a wheelchair. And even though it was early post-Soviet era, when it was very unusual to see disabled people on the street, not to mention to see them at school. Moreover, the building itself, it was inaccessible for wheelchair. So my parents, they had to lift me, my classmates, they had to, and teachers, they had to push my wheelchair. To put my wheelchair. But to be honest, for children, it doesn't important. If you can play games, they play. they will forget about your disability very quickly. It's enough, they will ask you some very certain, very direct questions, and if you answer honestly, they will forget about your disability. I remember that even when we played very active games, that when we needed to move around a lot, we always could find some possibilities that I participate too. I know that it's a popular phrase in all languages, kids are cruel. But to be honest, they are not cruel. And it's not children, it's adults and society who start to tell children that somebody is different, that somebody is other, that you must be polite and caring about this special child. And when adults start such conversation, children will start also to perceive you with the stigma of other. They will start to perceive you as a disabled person. But why does it happen? Why adults and society think that there is some special way to be a friend or classmate with people with disabilities? Why do they believe that there is some special way to treat us? After all, as all disability scholars have said, and I absolutely agree with them, we all become disabled at a certain age if we live long enough. Moreover, it could be some accident and you also become disabled. So do you want that somebody will treat you different in any day? I don't think so. I know that very often people stigmatize disabled people unintentionally. They even do not understand it. And some funny story from my own experience, recent experience. My parents do not speak English very well. We lived in this country only 1.5 years. But every time when we are going somewhere, be it restaurant, cinema, I don't know, social security office, people who work there, they start to speak with my parents, not to me, never. And I find it very funny situation. I'm staying silent until such a person will understand that my parents will not answer, or at least when such a person will start to speak with me. Another funny example, again from recent experience, me and my able-bodied friends, we were here in a restaurant, and I even make a bet that the waitress will bring the bill to my friend, not to me. And I won. And it is a classic experience of living with disability. It's happening with everyone who is disabled all over the world. If we are in a company of able-bodied person, our companion will be addressed to start the conversation, not we. So why does it happen? Why would I still believe that there is some special way to treat us? Personally, I and some of disability studies scholars agree with me. One of the biggest reasons it is a culture. And I will try to explain what I mean. When I was a child, I liked to read and I liked to watch movies. I still like to do it. Do you remember this feeling when you are watching a movie or reading a book and you are meeting your reflection in some hero or in some characters? I never had this feeling because I was craving to find some characters with a similar condition as I. And every time when it occurred, I was shocked because such character always was threatening, unpleasant, scary. In the best case, they were just pitiful. They were everything except what I thought I was and normal. I even have had such a list of cultural objects where I met people with disabilities. And there was no difference. Is it Russian culture? Is it English culture? French? American? The stereotype was always the same: villain, victim, warrior, hero. So the lack of realistic representation of disabled character led me to idea of getting my second degree while I was worked as software developer. I started to explore why there is no realistic representation of disabled people in movies and not in movies, in literature in the beginning. And I found that the reason is because people with disability in the past were unseen and hidden. Authors just didn't know anything about life of disabled person. And it is natural to be afraid of such things that we do not know. It's our instinct. For example, we do not have experience of communication with aliens. At least I do not have. And we always depict them similar to the human, but strange, weird, scary. The same happened with disabled people. Okay, there was a reason why it's happened in past, but what about nowadays? I thought that after American Act with disabilities, after people with disabilities struggled for their rights, to a certain degree, we became active, at least in the Western countries. We can study, we can work in certain degree, so it should lead to drastic changes in representation. To find answer for these questions, I started to study my PhD. And however, my main topic was representation of disabled people in Russian culture, so I explored Russian movies, television, books. I also compared it with Western culture. And the answer is that it's still stereotypical. Despite of many positive changes, it's always depicted in a certain way. And let's look closely to some examples. I will try to explain what do I mean. As far as I know, and disability studies scholars have mentioned it, Me Before You, book of Georgia Moyes, it is one of the most famous example what able-bodied say when you ask them, tell me some book or some movie with disabled character. And I do not blame such people. I understand why do they like this book and movie. It's really exciting. But let's think critical. Let's look on this book and on this movie through the lens of disabled person. If anybody hasn't seen that movie or read this book yet, I'm sorry, I'm about to give in a spoiler. The story about Will Trainer, a successful, young, handsome, self-confident, educated, wealthy businessman from Wall Street. He climbs mountains, he drives his bike, he's very popular among women. So we see ideal life of ideal man. And in the first chapter, he becomes paralyzed. He barely can move his arm to move his power wheelchair. He even needs help in eating. And he is living in the annex of his parents' house. In a contrast to the Will, we see Louise. She is uneducated. She have never traveled outside of her town. She's not self-confident, and as you can guess, she becomes his caregiver, and finally she fell in love with him. Despite of such perfect feelings, despite of love to each other, Will wants to make assistive suicide. Moreover, he asks Louis to be with him at that moment. Of course, the plot of this book is more complicated than my description. The author show how Louis' attitude towards Will evolves from disgust to love, how Will educates her. But anyway, the main idea of such movie and book, that disability is such bad fate, such awful way to live, that even if you have plenty money and do not need to worry about how to cover bills without work, how to pay salary for caregivers, even you experience true love for the first time in your life, you still do not want to live such life. There are many scenes in that movie that show that despite of vulnerable health of Will and some pain that he experienced, he could live full life, he could be active, he could even jump mountains and fly airplanes. But he refuses even go outside of the house. He refuses to create a family with Louis because for Will, such a family where man is in wheelchair, it is a third, second, or even fourth class citizen. Will ends his life solely on the basis of having disability. And I can agree that such people as will exist, but it's minority of people with disability. Moreover, in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, people with disability made protests against that movie, but it's still one of the most known, one of the most favorite among able-bodied people. And the problem not in this movie specifically, it's not problem of movie. The problem that majority of movies, what we have, convey one and the same message, how bad is life with disability. Filmmakers and writers show us that even if you take all problems of such life, it still does not deserve to be lived. And I like comment of Jackie Brown. He's an Australian activist, and now will be quotation or citation, I don't remember this word. When able-bodied people feel as though they want to die, we get them help and talk about suicide prevention. But when people with disability are depressed, there is a large subset of society sending the message that it's understandable and wanting to legislate to help them do it. End of quotation. Let's briefly look at some other movies about disability. $1 Million Baby. It's a story about a young woman boxer who becomes paralyzed after being hit, and she asks her coach to help to kill herself. Another movie, Breathe, based on real story. To be honest, it's not very bad movie. It's good movie about man who had polio, became paralyzed, and most of his life he's breathing with respiratory. But the end of the story, again, he asked to help to make him suicide. Considering such movies, I'm not surprised that in 2002, Harriet McBride Johnson had a debate. Harriet McBride Johnson, she's a disability advocate and activist. And she had a debate with Peter Singer, professor of Princeton University, about his idea of killing newborn babies with severe disabilities. And I'm not kidding, it was really happened. And the worst thing, I think, in my opinion, that the main idea of this argument was that disability, life with disability, contains only suffering for such child and people around him. And here is a small part of article of Harriet McBrady Johnson, Unspeakable Conversation from book Disability with Ability. He insists he doesn't want to kill me. He simply thinks it would have been better, all things considered, to have given my parents the option of killing the baby I once was, and to let other parents kill similar babies as they come along, and thereby avoid the suffering that comes with lives like mine, and satisfy the reasonable preference of parents for a different kind of child. It has nothing to do with me. I should not feel threatened. I do not have right to blame or judge people with disabilities who decided to commit suicide. But my question is how much society and cultural stereotypes are guilty in informing such decision. As Imani Barbarin, disability right activist, said, discrimination from the outside world we can recognize, but the discrimination we are taught to apply to ourselves is harder to identify. And I do not want that such attitude, instilled among other by movies and books, lead to suicide among people with disabilities. For now, assisted suicide is not allowed in most countries, in most of the world. But if you look on this map, you will see that it is allowed mostly in Western countries. And I suppose that culture, cinema, and literature could be some contributing factors to the decision to legislate euthanasia. And I'm afraid that if it will be allowed assisted suicide in more countries, and filmmakers or writers will continue to provide the idea that the life of people with disability contains only suffering. In some day we get to the point, then we will start to look at people with disability living full life as somebody who did not use their opportunity to kill themselves, as somebody who could have chosen to ease the life of his relatives and save taxpayer money, but does not do it. Statistics shows that if women know by DNA test that their future child will have disability and do not decide to make abortion, they do not find, mostly cases, not always, but mostly, they do not find support from their loved ones, from society, and sometimes even from doctors. Again, it's not my mission. I don't have right to blame women who decide to make abortion when they know that fetus will have disability. But I do not want that such decision to be made based on knowledge from media that future child will have only suffering in his life. It is another movie. Let's talk about it. It's famous French comedian Untouchable and its American remake The Upside. It is the second most known, most popular movie with disabled protagonist. And able-bodied people like to provide it as positive example of representation. I agree that authors of this movie has more positive view on disability but it still conveys the same story of bad life of disabled person. Philip is in wheelchair. He's extremely wealthy and does not seem to have any other problem except of his depression and soul suffering from limited mobility. Dries is uneducated but very positive and kind guy who becomes his caregiver. Philip shows to Dries the beauty of opera and high culture. Dries makes the life of Philip more fun and helps to overcome the fear of Philip of being rejected by women. Again, what we see, Philip is secure financially. He has a good sense of humor, manner, temper. He's smart. But despite this, he doesn't have any friend. Nobody needs him except of his helpers to whom he pays money for work on him. Not even his daughter. Isn't it the bad destiny what we can imagine? Finally, he needs an able-bodied helper, and only with the help of him, Philip understands that he could be active and in some degree happy. To be happy. The movie is based on the real story, but if you read the book, it has very big discrepancy. And this discrepancy, again, like in the movie, it showed like the worst destiny. The disability is the worst destiny. There is special terminology in disability studies to explain stereotypical depiction of people with disability. The most famous is inspirational porn created by Stella Young, and later on disability study activists started to use pity porn. The idea of inspirational porn and pity porn that suggests that disabled people are seen in movie and television as an object by non-disabled people for their own satisfaction. People consume stories about successful disabled people, such as athletes in Olympic Games, or pity story, such as Me Before You or Untouchable, and they consume the story with thoughts, oh, how I'm lucky. It's so good that it's not my destiny. It's so good that it's not my story. Or they consume it like, if that guy could do something in his condition, how much I can achieve? And going back to the beginning of my speech, how after such representation, the waitress or some worker who have never experienced anybody with disability treat me as equal or normal, if culture every time show that this person, the person with disability, is an object of pity or charity. It is Alex Dacey. In internet, her name is Wheelchair Rapunzel. Recently, she has SMA, the same disease as me, and recently she has become mother. She has able-bodied child and able-bodied husband or boyfriend. I do not know exactly their relationship, but as you see, she has more than 400,000 followers in her blog, and as you see, she's happy. Moreover, she can make somebody happy. Does she have problems? Of course she do. But who doesn't have them? This is Judy Hellman. Sometimes she's called like mother of disability right activism. Um, it should be separate talk about her. She's really wonderful person. But in addition to her activism, she was also a wife. She worked at the administration of Bill Clinton. She worked at the World Bank, Ford Foundation. Um, There, on the other side, you see Alice Wong. She was also a disability activist, and she was the first person, I think it was when Obama was president, she was the first person who participated in a ceremony through the robots, through the internet. It is James Ian. He's singer and songwriter. I can bring you many examples of people with disabilities who live ordinary life. Some of them are popular among some community, as mentioned above example. Somebody not, but as you see, they lead normally ordinary life. And their life doesn't differ very much from yours, except of stigma that society imposed on them. So does disability make them unhappy? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Is their life valuable to be lived? Does it deserve to be lived? I think yes. And personally, I like very much attitude of Imani Barbarin to the topic of disability. She says that there is some aspect of disability that she'd rather not have. But that doesn't mean that she'd rather to be non-disabled, that she prefer to be non-disabled. And she compared it with menopause. She may not like it, but that doesn't mean that she would rather be a man. Yeah, I think everyone agrees with this thought. So why does filmmakers and authors still show us stereotypically? I think, and disability studies scholars also have mentioned, that the problem is that most of stories are told through the lens of healthy people, from the lens of healthy majority. Also, very often, people with disability are not involved in process of creating movies, books, etc. And I believe that until people with disability are not involved in creating our own representation, the situation will not change. And to conclude, I would like to cite Dominic Ewan, who is a film producer and director with disabilities. Every story that's written from this non-disabled lens is not a story of disability. It's a story of fear of disability. And that's all. If you think that it's interesting topic, and it was like a very small part of what I have studied. So if you think it's interesting to continue such meetings, we can do more. And here is some books and movie that personally I find the least stereotypical. And if you have questions regarding my today representation or just regarding disability, I'm absolutely free to answer. And here is some disability study books if somebody is interested in this topic. That's all. So somebody will be brave. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Krogan-Kamara. I think you did a fantastic job today. You said a lot of really interesting things. A lot of them I can relate to because I have a daughter with a disability. who was in a wheelchair and she can't speak. And our family brings her out into the public a lot, and people come over and say hi to her, and then they get talking to me. So then I try to be silent, and let her take over, you know.
Yeah, it's
So
very
I
typical.
really relate to that, thank you.
Yeah, and I can say that I remember that I was always angry to this situation, but once when I first time met some blind person or person with low vision, I made the same error, exactly the same, because I'm thinking like person in wheelchair, but I didn't think as person with other disability. And after that time, I started to think, no, I shouldn't stigmatize. If even I stigmatize, who will change this situation?
I don't remember the name of the book, but it's basically not for disabled persons only. In many countries worldwide, especially like in that book was the African countries where kind of going back from patriarchy, matrimony, so in the societies where men are seen as kind of higher than women, she was telling her experience on how she would be, she would go into the cafeteria, restaurant, and they would greet the man, ask something to the man, ignore women completely. So it's many people may experience that, no matter if it's like society divides gender and disabilities, people of color, and also what you were mentioning about kids. I also don't remember the source, sorry, but I've seen a video where kids of different races are put together in a room, and they asked, "What, like, how are you different from
Yeah, I remember this video too.
And they start thinking about games and the preferences. Who likes this color? Like I like green, and she likes yellow, and that's the lens a lot from what you were talking about. I understand you're saying, from a perspective of people with disability, but we can pick up on so much more.
Yeah, for children, it's not important at all. It's mostly adults who make difference between disabled or not, or race or something else. So that's why I said that I believe that most problems are coming from culture. Yeah?
So I have a daughter with a very serious chronic illness, and when she was growing up, I didn't tell her all of the things that I knew because it wasn't right. It was not the right time. I needed her to discover things as she got older and would read about the seriousness of her illness. So of course she did come to an age where she would read and then she would ask me, is this true for me? This is for other people, not for me. And we had to have those very difficult conversations. But I wonder, when you went to school and you felt like you were just one of the other kids, and was that something that your parents instilled so that they told you, you can do whatever they do? If they're going to play outside, you play outside. If they're going to have a sleepover, you go to the sleepover. Was it more you? Was it your parents, or both?
I do not remember that my parents told me something. I even do not remember to understanding that I am disabled. To be honest, I had before coming to school, I didn't visit kindergarten. So I mostly interacted with children who are children of my parents' friends. And as there was 2 or 3 child with whom I played, and they perceived me as absolutely normal. When I went to school, I felt myself as normal. And I remember that there was some situation when I understood that I can do it, but as I told, normally children are very creative, and they will find some way that you participate. Even when there was some games and you have to run, then I was the judge, or I was just trainer or coach or somebody. For children, it's not a problem. All problems coming from adults, from parents who are starting to say that something is, you have to be polite, you shouldn't do something with that girl, you can't hit her. Why? If we are children, we are children, sometimes we are hitting. So I do not remember that somebody told me that.
Okay. Well, this was very inspiring and very enlightening.
I hope not inspiring like porn.
No, it opens my eyes to, I've seen most of those movies.
Yeah, I
and
think so.
Didn't think about it from the lens of, like you said, people who would rather not live than to find a life with the new way that they were put into this new disability.
To be honest, I looked the interview with Georgia Moyes. She was shocked, like reaction of people after the movie came to the screen. And her answer was like, it is a story only of one character. Why you are so worried about it? She didn't get that if the story is in every movie, no, not in every, in most movies, that what other people, okay, I understand that it's not true. Somebody will understand that it's not true, but if somebody do not have experience and he is look such movies, he will treat you as the object of charity or as pity.
I can think of one more example which fits perfectly. I don't know if you've seen Gattaca. It's like an old 1997 sci-fi movie which scientists made partially possible now with CRISPR technology. I guess I'm gonna make a spoiler again. You guys have 23 years to see it, so there was it's a sci-fi about a world where people can combine their DNA to make the best, perfect, healthy, intellectual, whatever child, and the world is depicted as everyone in that world were born like this, but then there's a story of the guy who parents decided to
Not make
give
perfect.
birth like we do, and his dream was to become an astronaut, and he has a brother who was born that way, so he would lose in the swimming competition they had. He would not be as tall. He would always be the second. And in the movie, he could not get the job in the center. They were given kind of janitor jobs, like low paid jobs, because in that world, like they were perceived as basically some sort of being disabled or being weaker, and he is in that center, and he found the person. So the second, Jude Law plays the person in a wheelchair, and he is not happy with his life, and he ends the life exactly in the same examples you've showed on the other popular movies. And because he thinks that I'm in a wheelchair, what can I do now? So he basically use his ID, his identity to get into that center. And he told, like one line I remember, even though it did not prevent this, the director of the movie from, again, that character in a wheelchair commit suicide. And before that, he's borrowing his identity. He's like, no, I don't need it. You can use it. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm not going to do anything. Like, what do you want to do? I want to be an astronaut. Oh, in space you don't need legs to walk.
Okay, I need to watch it. I haven't seen that movie.
But I mean, very interesting because it's a second character, so not the main character in a wheelchair, but unfortunately it's the same portrait, like it's the same vision.
The same vision.
Very similar to what you showed
Yeah.
in the movies.
Most of them are such. Julie, you wanted to ask
I
something?
have a question. So, Alina, how do you think, a lot of the stories that you talked about, I think, are people who were disabled through an accident later in their lives. Is that true? I guess my question is, do you think there's a difference for people who were born with a disability as opposed to people who
There is
either
huge
through
difference.
an accident or through illness became disabled later in life? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a bit big and huge difference. I mean, mostly those people, no, at least I have experience with Estonia and a little bit with the United States, but those who have disability from the birth or from the early years, they mostly, how to say, they used to be in such condition. And I can't say that they do not have the same problems, they have the same problems, but for them it's not so big deal. They do not have, it's really much easier than if you were absolutely healthy and then something happened and you are in a new condition. Of course you have depression, and it's normally to have depression, as Will had the question why we're showing only stories about this depression, why we do not see other stories. So yes, people who are activists, mostly they have disability from the beginning. But there are some other stories too, when people become disabled and then becoming activists. Yeah?
So if I understand you correctly, those who are born with a disability can make the adjustments necessary to have a more normal, if you will, life than those who become disabled later on in life, having had, quotes, a normal beginning.
Yeah, for them it's harder. I mean, because first of all, they knew another life, and for them it's like, as I told about Will, for him the life in a wheelchair is a second life, a second-class citizen life. And the same when person were healthy and become in wheelchair, he think that now he is less valuable, his life is less valuable, and it's not because he's in wheelchair, but because of stigma that is very spread in society. There is theory that disability is not wheelchair, it is not bad design and lack of ramp. Like if we made another society like very accessible and very good, there will be no disability. Of course there will be pain if somebody suffers from pain, but there will no be stigma of disability.
So to follow up on that, if you're a teacher, at what time in a child's development is born with a disability becoming an issue for them?
Again, it depends on your life. I do not remember how to say. I visited normally ordinary school only first 4 grades, because after that it is a system that you have each class in different room, and it was very hard to move me. So after 4th grade I had a home study. And of course it was mentally like hard time because I used to be at school and now I have to study at home. And for me it was that time when I understand that disability is some issue. I think for me it was that time, yeah. But again, at that time I already had friends from school who perceived me as ordinary, and we continued to be friends, and after school to go out together. So it helped me to overcome this feeling. But most of problems, they are coming not because you're in a wheelchair, but because your friends are going somewhere, for example, and you can't go there. And you can't go there because there was no elevator, or there is no ramp. And disability study scholars, they are writing, I do not remember who of them wrote this, but steps and stairs is just design. And if we are thinking, it's not comfortable for us, it's not comfortable for children, it's not comfortable for older people, it's just design, it's stereotype that if it's a building, it should be stairs and steps. Ramp is more comfortable for everyone. but we are still building the houses and put stairs. So, question of, yeah,
I
Jack?
have a question. Back on the topic of those that develop disabilities later in life, there are some who overcome the feeling of loss and become stronger.
Stephen Hawkins.
And better. Or I should just say stronger and even successful with,
Yeah.
with their disability. What would you say would contribute to that? Would it be, I would imagine, got to start within their own minds, but then likely the right environment, the right surroundings, support structure, with family, friends, we can help somebody, accept their new life and be strong with it.
Are you asking what can help to them?
Well, like some people will lose a limb
No, Stephen Hawking.
and become an Olympian, or
Yeah, of course there are such examples. I'm not
Right.
saying that everyone who becomes disabled in adult are only depressed. Of course, most of them are overcome it. What can help to overcome it? I think that if why I do not like this Me Before You, because they show the example where there is no problem. And normally you have depression and problems
Right.
because you can't go out from home. You do not have job because the building is not accessible. So normally you wouldn't have depression just because you are in a wheelchair. Of course it's bad that you can't move your legs, but if you have wheelchair and now it's not so big deal to get it, the depression will go away very quickly. And
the
normally,
depression comes from your mindset.
yeah,
It's,
so
you're telling yourself that this is awful.
yeah.
Right, rather than, accept your state.
Normally parents, friends, they're also supportive. And the biggest problems, as I'm saying, if take away all other problems, then only is the stigma.
I know listening to you today, I'm definitely sitting here like totally, like blown away a bit because I've never even thought about this in this light before. So this, definitely, have awakened even my own mind as to what we're doing, in our society. This is definitely a deeply embedded in our culture. You can see it.
And the problem is that very often when disability is teaching somewhere, it's teaching not through the lens of person with disability. It's teaching from the medical perspective. And I didn't talk about it, but there is two different models. There is medical model of disability and there is social model of disability. And in the past, it was spreaded everywhere that disability is medical problem. And now everyone knows that it's wrong. It should be social model of disability. But if you are looking even courses in our university, you will see that it's still the knowledge about this topic is given through the lens of medical issue. It's still like some special education or how to speak with a child, some pathology. There is no conversation about like you should treat it as normal person just with some physical problems.
I thought your presentation was absolutely wonderful, and I loved your use of humor, but you got your points across, and I hope you speak to many other groups, because I think it's really valued. The question that I have, and maybe this is for a follow-up, is when we're talking about disability, it appears that what we're talking about are disabilities that you can see, or physical disabilities. But I'm wondering about invisible disabilities, such as mental illness, and how that kind of fits into your framework.
In my PhD, I didn't mention it. I explored only physical disability. But if you look movies about mental disability, you will see that it's also very stereotypical. It's still, how to say, I forgot to mention that only last years it's like rule that people with disability are played by actor with disability. Before this, it was always some healthy, for example, the most popular movie with mental disability, Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks, perfect actor, but why they didn't take actor with really mental disability? So the problem is the same, and most of how to say, most of problems with people with mental disabilities, of course, it's harder for them to accommodate the society and be perceived as equal. But again, everything is possible to teach, and we shouldn't think about them as a second class. So I think that the problem is that we are not teaching people how to treat in the right way. And this book, what I put here, Demystifying Disability, I found it perfect because in comparison with others, it's written very human language. It's not academic, and it covers most of problems, not only about physical but also mental disability. Because the author, she is in a wheelchair, but she is writing that she has also mental disability.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. I'm originally from Russia, and back home we do not speak about disability like Lina was saying. It's like people are aliens and we are afraid. It's like literally like it's something that is transmitted from one person to another. So I truly appreciate you sharing your thoughts and ideas and like really creating the awareness. And it was very interesting to hear some of the feedback that even in the US, where you feel like there is a lot created to kind of ease life of people with disabilities. This is still a very big topic, but I have a little bit of a maybe professional question. I work in human resources, and nowadays in the workplace there is a lot of DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and we talk about DEI. So my question is, what is the disability, if you are aware, I don't know if you have the answer, but like what is the disability community kind of attitude towards the DEI activities that are currently super popular in big companies? Because like every big company is like talks a lot about it, well, does a lot to support it as well, speaks a lot and creates awareness as well. But like, is that something you might be aware of or not?
I didn't explore it during my PhD, but from my own perspective and from people with disabilities who are from United States, I do not know them all very close, but I'm in some communities, and I think it is good that such topics are taken like obligatory in at least in big companies. I think it's perfect.
Thank you. No, it's true. I was just thinking like how like what might be the attitude. In my company, we start every meeting with a DEI tip, so we share little tips, and you gave me a great tip for my Tuesday meeting.
It's good. I find it good.
I think it all goes to the larger issues of inclusion and non-discrimination, because of the non-discrimination that coming from the 60s and for civil rights, and the Disability Act comes in 1988, and with the accommodation. So it goes in the history of the United States, it goes through 2 or 3 stages of change. It didn't happen overnight, so over the last 40 years, we have seen a gradual change and improvement of people's attitudes towards inclusion and non-discrimination for people with disabilities.
Yeah,
But I do think that you're right that the field of special education has changed a lot, but whether you actually need to focus on special education to talk about disabilities, or you could actually be totally inclusive because everyone's in the same program, everyone's studying the same subject, you sit together, the instructor the employer and everyone should be treating everyone the same, and actually not like, I like how you characterize it. You don't want single out and too much attention, but you also don't want to be, people ignore the differences. Because once you ignore the differences, you just don't think about the RAM and all those things that are necessary for inclusion. So you just have to strike a balance between the two. You know, as a person minority, every minority person, everyone have a special identity. You can think about this in this light. That sometimes you're being kind of pitched into one area. A black person would be in this way, an Asian person would be in this way. And I see that there's similarities between different types of identities that people kind of single it out and just think that you are just that. So there are a lot of stereotypes that happen to all kinds of identities. I really like how you try to talk about inclusion in a very personal perspective, and actually based on your own experiences, and actually tell people about who don't have your experiences and don't understand them.
Thank you. And yeah, about minority, when I started to explore this topic, then I found that all these movements, disability rights movements, black people movements, they all went together, and they very much help one to each other. And also lesbian, gays, they all those minority, they have similar problems. They are different, yeah. Problems of me, who needs ramp and accessibility, and problems of black people or gay or lesbian. They seems to be different, but their attitude from society, the stigma, it is very similar.
So you have come to the U.S. After Estonia. So do you feel that it's very similar in terms of the kind of attitudes, or do you think in the United States because the Baltic states is a little bit different from Russia, of course, and Estonia is a post-Soviet country that has been very increasingly westernized. So how do you compare Estonia with the U.S. in terms of our treatment of people with disabilities?
I can say that, of course, Western countries and United States including has more positive attitude. And I felt myself like, oh, I do not need, I had speech in Bridgewater State University in BC Day. And I talked like, I still can't forget that I do not need each time to call to cafeteria and ask, do you have ramp? Do you have accessible restroom? Because in Estonia, however, also changes are very big during the last 20 years. But each time when I need to go somewhere before going out, I have to call and ask, do you have ramp? Do you have restroom? And in most cases, they don't, because it's old buildings. And however, we have very similar laws. It should be accessible, but it's still not. But again, if I compare 1994, when I entered, I was enrolled at school, I didn't say about it that after my graduation, my school was one of the first in Estonia that was fully rebuilt and fully accessible. Now most of schools are accessible, but yeah, it was one of the first. So it's changing in Estonia too, but because of American Act of Disability and the movements that born here, the changes are better and they're more positive attitude. And of course, if I compare Estonia and Russia, I have been once in Russia about 6 years ago. It's unreal to be there. I went to St. Petersburg that had to be very accessible after football champion cup. I don't remember how to call it, and I expect it on. It's definitely accessible after these games. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so if somebody needs to write me, it's one of my emails. It's official from Estonian University, where I hope I will defend soon my PhD.